Hello, my friend. This is Clyde. Where you live says a lot. In 2 Samuel chapter 9 and verse 13 we read, "And Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem because he always ate at the king's table. He was lame in both feet." Many years ago, I happened to have been in a business place and I had to wait my turn. While I was waiting, I overheard a conversation between a group of women who were having a good girls' chat, talking about an emerging group of persons in the society, people with little education who lived in the poorer side of town, but many of them, through their entrepreneurial skills, were becoming wealthy almost overnight. Okay, let me see where this conversation is going, I thought. This analysis of the society went on to say that these new wealth resulted in many of these previously poor people moving out of their poor neighborhoods, and they were buying houses in more affluent communities. But the most interesting piece of observation by these women was that these new arrivals were moving their unsophisticated children into private schools, mixing with children from families with generations of wealth. This was abhorrent, it seems, because these children who used to live in poverty don't know how to behave, and they were bringing down the value and prestige of these schools. Whoa! I was amused at the assessment, but I've never forgotten it. Today, I invite us to look at something similar and see how this can impact us. David had settled on the throne, having succeeded King Saul. Saul hated David and tried on several occasions to kill him. Meanwhile, David's best friend was also Saul's son, Jonathan. Well, both Saul and Jonathan had died, and that is how David ascended to the throne. One day, David inquired if there was any living relative from Saul's family. Why was David making such an inquiry? In his own words, "No one still alive from the house of Saul can show God's kindness." What a great idea. David was not expected to do anything for any member of Saul's family, but David was an extraordinary human being. They told him that Jonathan died leaving a son named Mephibosheth, and catch this, there is still a son of Jonathan. He is lame in both feet. We don't hear whether he is tall or short, fat or thin, happy or in mourning, but we heard about his disability. Well, this young man, whose grandfather was the first king of the nation of Israel, was living in what seemed like poverty in a place called Lodebar. I don't know if all that information was meant to make the king give up his dream to show God's kindness to someone from that family of a king who made several attempts to kill him. Why would you want to show them God's kindness? In a real sense, we are like Mephibosheth. We came into this world as sinners and found ourselves living sinful lives, nothing like what God wants for us. Lodebar for us means a place of struggle, a place of trying to survive. At the same time, there is someone who wants to do something big for me. Let's see what happened following the king hearing that there is someone, a lame grandson of the late king. David sent for the young man. When he arrived in front of the king, the lame young man heard the strangest good news. The king told him that they have recently regained all lands that belonged to his father and grandfather, and these have already been legally transferred in his name. The king said, "We have arranged for property once owned by your parents to become yours." But listen to the last line of David's amazing announcement to the lame grandson of the first king of Israel who was living out in a poverty-stricken village. "And you will always eat at my table." The king could not be serious. Who is going to overturn what the king says anyway? David cut through the slow process of red tapes and said to this young man, who was lame, As of today, you're not going back to Lodebar. As of now, you are moving from Lodebar to Jerusalem. You are changing residence, my friend. Once you lived in Lodebar, but as part of the plan to show you the kindness of God, you will now be living here in Jerusalem. And guess what? As of today, you will eat with me and my family. I don't know Lodebar, but it sounds like a contrast to the new home. That is exactly what happens to us when we become believers. God makes us into his children, and he moves us out of the context of sinfulness and struggle and spiritual. He elevates us to live as kings. In other words, you have lived for a long time. It is time to move you to a higher place in life. It is time for your father's best friend something for you. God did that exactly for me and you. In fact, we changed residence. Mephibosheth could not believe. This was too much for him. But that is what God does for us. Imagine the shift. Mephibosheth had a challenge to adapt to life in the new neighborhood, in the new residence. This young man who used to live out in the country is now going to live in the city. This young man who was a nobody in Lodebar was now a member of the king's family in Jerusalem. This young man who was living in a lousy place, a place of no significance, is now living in the capital city of Jerusalem in the king's palace. But what is so significant about him living in the house of the king? Simple. What you eat reflects who you are and whether you are a new arrival of sorts. David's guest, as a young man who is now considered equal with the king's children, was not afforded a privilege that he could not even dream about. As of now, he will be eating royal food. My friend, what are you eating? Where are you living? You and I should live according to our new neighborhood. God has moved us. We are now children of God, and we changed community. We no longer live in that place where humans who don't know Jesus struggle. Today we are seated at the king's table, where we eat from a table spread before us in the presence of our enemies. That is so exciting. Where you live, my friend, says a lot. I hope you are living in the house of the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and you are eating the best meals around the king and his family. After all, you have moved away from your Lodebar. If this message has been useful to you, you can write me at friendofclyde@gmail.com.